About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld, and one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." I said, "We're going to war with Iraq? Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, "I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it."
In the 1990s, and I said that the West really doesn't understand militant Islam. So I wrote a book in 1995, and I said that if the West doesn't wake up to the suicidal nature of militant Islam, the next thing you'll see is the militant Islam is bringing down the World Trade Center.
How did Larry Silverstein get the World Trade Center towers? That's very important, because the World Trade Center towers were actually like public property. They were owned by an institution called the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, a public body. Well, what they did is Ronald Lauder, this very high-level Zionist, he's the son of Estee Lauder, he was put in charge of a privatization scheme in New York State under Governor Pataki. So he decided what they would privatize. So he decided they would privatize the World Trade Center. Then Lou Eisenberg, who was the chairman of the board of the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, and he then oversaw the negotiations that delivered the World Trade Center to this man. So through their Zionist back channel, the property got sent and wound up in his hands. And this is the day that he got the towers, he got the keys to the front door there, and he said, on July 24th, 2001, about 5 weeks before 9/11, he said, "I am proud to assume the stewardship of the World Trade Center, one of New York's greatest jewels." And under Larry's stewardship, 5 weeks later, the towers looked like this. And people who removed this rubble said that all that was left was steel and dust.
The biggest problem with the Twin Towers was the large amount of asbestos they contained. Built in a time when the use of asbestos was still allowed in civil construction, at least 400 tons of this extremely dangerous material had been used to fireproof the steel structure of the buildings and to insulate hundreds of miles of pipings for water, heating, and air conditioning. Asbestos was also present in the ceiling panels, the elevator shafts, and the vinyl tiles from office floors. From a property condition assessment of the Twin Towers dated December 2000, we read, according to Port Authority records, a total of 7 million square feet of vinyl asbestos floor tiles were installed in the World Trade Center. By the time asbestos was banned from civil construction, the Twin Towers were nearing their completion. Initially, the asbestos was encapsulated wherever possible to prevent the particles from being inhaled. But in the 1990s, the regulations grew tighter, and every time a simple renovation was needed, the complete removal and replacement of the asbestos was also required. At the same time, because of the health risk it posed, the cost of asbestos removal and abatement had been skyrocketing. Reportedly, by the year 2000, the Port Authority was looking at an asbestos abatement bill of as much as $1 billion, the same money it would have cost to build a brand new tower. Back in the 90s, the Port Authority had sued the insurance companies, trying to get them to cover the cost of the asbestos removal. But in May 2001, 4 months before the terrorist attack, the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey lost their 10-year-old court battle. At that point, the Port Authority was between a rock and a hard place. The Twin Towers could no longer be maintained without incurring the cost of asbestos removal, yet they could not be demolished because of the large amounts of asbestos they contained. The only remaining option was to dismantle and remove the two poison-filled giants one piece at a time. But the cost of such an operation would have been so astronomical that no one has ever tried to put a number on it.
A little over a year before September 11th, an Israeli art group named Gelatin, which is also coincidentally high-powered explosives, began an ongoing project on the 91st floor of the World Trade Center. to add a balcony to one of the floors. You can even see here in the Metro, which is a daily newspaper people hand out like the subways in the morning, they even did a little write-up about it. You have a picture down here of them working with all these boxes stacked around them, talking about the group Gelatin and working on their project, the B thing, which I suppose, according to them, is B for balcony, which I would suggest after these next few slides might stand for something else. Now, if you look a little closer at this picture, it says BB18 on it. Now, BB18 is a popular fuse housing for when you have a million wires and you need to organize them for something. I don't know how many wires you would need to put a balcony outside, but my guess would be 0. Now, one night while they were working on this, they went to a whole bunch of floors and put E-Team, showing that they had access to all these floors, which is exactly where the first plane hit. They lit up floors 90 to 94, and the first plane, or the first explosion, happened on floors 93 to 99. After this was all done, they published a 62-page book about it, which is extremely hard to get, as you can imagine, which includes pictures of them doing it and all about it, and then some of their sketches. Now, keep in mind, these are supposed art students, okay? Now, I know art doesn't always mean drawing. It can mean many things, but nevertheless, these look like the scribbled out blueprints of a heist or something shady. Here's one with the tower. It says, very depressing inside, very amazing outside. All right, that's weird. We want to break through to the amazement from the inside. Okay, like a bomb breaking out. And it says depression inside, amazement outside. And here's the second sketch of a building basically starting to crumble with debris falling all around it. Now, this isn't shady at all, guys. Here's another sketch of someone jumping out of the Twin Towers. Here's a sketch, and there's a lot of them. The creeper, I'm going to show a few of the towers and then all the lower levels behind it. On the top here, it says, God, bring airplane food. Right next to it, it says, last chance to open a parachute. If you go down here, it just says a whole bunch of creepy stuff. Highest worm population. All right, so this is a sketchbook which shows a crumbling tower, and it shows the towers here with a hole where their balcony supposedly is, but is where the plane hits. It says, bring airplane food. The only pictures of them are standing next to 100 fuse boxes that are used to rig up things like, I don't know, bombs. Their name is Gelatin, which is a high-powered explosive, and is called the B thing, working on the exact same floors where the first explosion hit.
Footage from the tragic accident shows a controlled demolition of Building 7 as the Twin Towers were crashing down. Furthermore, when we dig a little deeper, we'll see that Building 7 was owned by Larry Silverstein, the same guy that the insurance companies just so happened to pay $4 billion to because of the attack.
Where were you on September 11th?
I was home.
Larry Silverstein canceled his meeting. Every morning he had a meeting at Windows in the World. Oh, but that day his wife made an appointment for him to go to it was like the skin doctor or something. Yeah, right. Okay.
That particular morning, because I have light-colored hair and fair skin and an annuity to the dermatologist, my wife, God bless her, had made an appointment for me at the doctor. And I remember dressing to go to the doctor. I'm finally saying to my wife, I said, sweetheart, I've got so much to do downtown. I got to cancel this. I've got to go downtown. And she said, you're not going to cancel this appointment. You're going to the dermatologist.
So he happened to miss that meeting that he went to every single morning on that particular morning. It also come down just before he bought those that a whole bunch of asbestos had to be removed, which was an insane amount of money. It would have been impossible. He would have had to take the buildings down or shut them down or something.
July 24th, 2001. Larry A. Silverstein, who already owned World Trade Center 7, signs a $3.2 billion 99-year lease on the entire World Trade Center complex 6 weeks before 9/11. Included in the lease is a $3.5 billion insurance policy, specifically covering acts of terrorism. September 6th, 2001, 3,150 put options are placed on United Airlines stock. A put option is a bet that a stock will fall. That day, put options were more than 4 times its daily average. Bomb-sniffing dogs are pulled from the World Trade Center, and security guards end 2 weeks of 12-hour shifts. September 7th, 2001, 27,294 put options are placed on Boeing stock, more than 5 times the daily average. September 10th, 2001. 4,516 put options are placed on American Airlines, almost 11 times its daily average. San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown receives a phone call warning him not to fly the next morning. And in Pakistan, at a military hospital, all of the urologists are replaced by a special team in order to host their guest of honor, Osama bin Laden, who is carefully escorted inside to be watched carefully and looked after.
Were reported to have been at the World Trade Center that day. This is a Jerusalem Post article, and it says that the Foreign Ministry in Jerusalem has so far received the names of 4,000 Israelis believed to have been in the area of the World Trade Center and the Pentagon at the time of the attack. Now that's how many people called in, how many families called in and said, I'm worried about Shlomo, I'm worried about this guy, I'm worried about that guy, my son is there, my husband's there. Well, what happened, of those 4,000 people who were supposedly there, only 3 or 4 died. 3 or 4 Israelis died in the whole operation. Well, how did they avoid harm? Well, what clearly happened also is that there was an instant messaging service called Odigo, an Israeli instant messaging service, that sent out a warning 2 hours before 9/11 happened, warning people not to go to the World Trade Center that day because there would be a catastrophe there. And the vice president of the company said that the prediction, the time, was exact to the minute. So 8:45, right? And the message was sent out on a platform that you could receive through your BlackBerry or your Blueberry or your cell phone or your internet, whatever. And so all platforms. But it was sent out in Hebrew, and it was sent out using a buddy system where you could say,
I worked in the building for 20 years. I was the person in charge of all the stairwells of the North Tower. And on 9/11, I had the only master key that opened the doors that rescued people. This is the master key. They call it the key of hope. And basically, I was a janitor. Like I said, on that day, there was an explosion on the basement. And this is prior to the building got hit by the plane. And then the plane hit, and then there was a series of explosions afterwards.
I think a bomb went off in the lobby first, then a plane hit the building. Then another plane hit the other building.
The bomb hit the lobby first, and a couple of seconds then the first plane hit.
Well, you've been to the White House 5 times. You've been honored by the president, President Bush. You've met Hillary Clinton. That must have been quite an honor for you.
It was an experience, definitely. And at that time, I was basically loaded to go into politics because they said this is the guy that we need to get the Latino vote. And I was playing the whole game of politics because I was doing the activism. And until the moment that I started to ask questions about what really happened on 9/11. And you may remember the whole thing about the 9/11 Commission to be formed, and basically became very active to get it basically started. And what a surprise. I was one of the persons that testified for the 9/11 Commission, and my testimony doesn't appear on the final report.
Willie, I could talk to you until 11 o'clock tonight when we go off the air, but we unfortunately have to wrap it up.
Basically, what I'm doing is telling the people what really happened on 9/11 because there's a lot of disinformation about what happened.
These that are with me were in the World Trade Center in the first building and escaped through the lobby where they report they believe there was a bomb in the lobby. And as we were coming out, we passed the lobby. There was no lobby. So I believe the bomb hit the lobby first.
What happened? It was an explosion. He was in the lobby, and the third explosion, the whole lobby collapsed on us.
What was it like? What was it like?
Horrible.
It's like hell. You don't want to know.
The whole building just collapsed on us.
Yes, you heard it right. Bombs in the World Trade Center.
Inside the lobby.
Was that a secondary explosion?
Yes, it was.
That was the planet, probably.
Yeah, definitely secondary explosion. Because we was inside waiting to go upstairs, and on the way upstairs, the whole fucking thing blew. And we just collapsed on everybody inside the lobby.
Similar to the first tower coming down, secondary?
I don't know about the first one, but I know the second was terrible. Then there was a third one, too, after that one.
Third explosion after that?
That's right. Everybody was inside the building, waiting to go upstairs, and they just let loose. Everything just let loose inside the building.
So what you told me is that there was a plane or whatever hit the building, then a secondary explosion.
It was like 3 explosions after that. We came in after the fire. We came when the fire was going on already. We was in the staging area inside the building, waiting to go upstairs. And they exploded. The whole lobby collapsed on the lobby inside.
It's just mayhem after that?
Just man, everybody tried to work their way out.
Just trying to help all the brothers get out.
A lot of people's trapped inside.
I was sitting in the Brooklyn Navy Yard across from Brooklyn. We watched the first explosion. As we were watching the buildings, I saw a black, very large airplane fly right into the second building. It came out of the south. It was so surreal, like a movie set. Second and third explosions also, right? We were in the building for the third one. It collapsed. I was on this drive here for the other one.
People don't understand. There may be more. Any one of these fucking buildings can blow up.
Bomb in the building, start clearing out. Bomb in the building, start clearing out.
I believe that censorship started from the very beginning because when I was telling my story, they told me, oh, cut this out, cut this out.
It was the first hijacked plane to hit the...
It was the first hijacked plane. No, hello, that was an explosion before 9/11.
The situation in the lobby was such that there was no doubt on what had happened.
The ladies that are with me were in the World Trade Center in the first building and escaped through the lobby where they report they believe there was a bomb in the lobby.
We ran down the steps to the lobby. There was no lobby. Everything was torn up. We came outside in the lobby. There was no lobby. The lobby was totally gone.
Did you see other people?
There was a woman there with her face blown off.
Big glass lobby, and all the glass was broken. Wires hanging from the ceiling, the signs that would hang above telling you where to go were all hanging. It was unbelievably scary to look at.
Firefighter John Schroeder was climbing the stairs of Tower 1 when he heard the huge explosion from below.
We were heading up to the 24th floor of the stairwell, and all of a sudden our building got rocked. We got bounced around in the stairwell like pinballs, man. And we just said, you know what? Time to go. We came down, it looked like a bomb went off in the lobby. Everything was exploded, everything was gone. We're like, what is going on here? For every window in the lobby to be exploded. I mean, them windows were like as thick as forget it. They were 2-3 inch glasses, you know, come on. They exploded out of the lobby. You know, it wasn't from the jet fuel. No.
With 9/11, and I could quickly go through it if you guys want me to, but there was you guys want me to? All right. Let's go through it. Oh, I can already see some. Okay, Shaniqua in the back is mad. Don't worry, we'll get to you next. We'll talk about watermelon and fried chicken here in a second. So, the Kool-Aid assassins in the back. So. Let me kind of go through it, right? Because I see what you're saying. You're saying like, hey, this topic is very dangerous. It could get you banned. I understand your perspective. But what I'm going to share now, I guarantee most people here don't know. And, they don't know because people don't talk about it because it's been suppressed. So on 9/11, the day of 9/11, there were 5 individuals that were on top of an apartment complex out in Jersey City, if I'm not mistaken, or Hoboken, one of these places right over the river. And they were there at about 8 o'clock in the morning. About an hour prior to the towers being hit. And what ended up happening was when the first tower got hit, they started celebrating and dancing, these 5 individuals. A woman is looking out to the towers with her binoculars, and she sees these 5 individuals dancing in front of a van. Well, that's weird. Why are these guys celebrating as the towers are on fire? And I'm not just talking about dancing. Like, these dudes are moonwalking. Like, they're doing some Michael Jackson type shit, right? They're going nuts, right? That's why she was able to see the commotion. So she calls the police because she thinks that's kind of weird, and they look Middle Eastern. So the police catch up to them. She gives out the description of the van and the license plate. Police catch up to them, and they stop them. When the officer approaches the car, guy gets out immediately. We are Israeli. We are not Palestinian. Those are your enemies, right? It's like, what the hell? That's kind of a weird thing to say when you're getting stopped. So they check the guys out, and they're 5 Israeli citizens, right, with large sums of cash and plane tickets to leave the country the next day. And they're driving a van called Urban Moving Systems. It's like, this is weird. So they call the FBI. FBI bring these guys in. They run their names through their databases. They find out that 2 of them have ties to Israeli intelligence. Well, that's weird. These guys were there an hour before the towers hit. They're dancing and celebrating. And then they asked them, hey, did you guys have prior knowledge that this was going to happen? They said no, but they got polygraphed and they were lying. And then they end up holding those guys in jail for about 70 days, immigration custody. And then ended up getting deported, getting sent back to Israel. And they went on a talk show, and they admitted that they were there to document the event, right? Which means they had foreknowledge that the towers are going to be hit. Now, that's just one component. That doesn't account for a bunch of other Israeli art students that were caught all across the United States spying across government buildings. The DEA wrote a whole memo about it, where these Israelis were behaving like art students to get access to the buildings and being interns, and they end up getting caught up in aspiring as well. And this is all leading up to 9/11. Then you find out that the buildings were purchased by a guy named Larry Silverstein, cha-ching, and he took out a very unique and unorthodox insurance policy that covered for terrorism. And then Building 7 went down in a perfect controlled demolition style, nice and even, and it never got hit by a plane. That was one of the small towers on the side of the World Trade Center. That went down randomly. And then witnesses on the ground said that they heard a bunch of bombs, right? They heard bombs. The firefighters that were there on the scene. Then it gets more interesting. And this is something that a lot of people don't know, and I'll share this with you guys. Shout out to my guy, Ryan Dawson. He talks about this in detail. You guys should go watch the documentary Empire Unmasked, where he covers all this. I'm summarizing a lot for you. Another group of Israelis were caught out in Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. And they were arrested as a part of a document benefit fraud conspiracy. On one end, you're like, oh, okay, these guys have fraud documents, whatever. Well, they find out that those guys were intelligence as well, and it gets crazier. One of them had a slip that shows that they were at the World Trade Center a month or two before 9/11, okay? And there was a woman that was going to testify against them that at the DMV, because she worked at the DMV giving these guys fake licenses and stuff like that. She was going to testify against them on behalf of the FBI. Before she went to court, she ends up dying in a fiery car crash all of a sudden, randomly, right? Keep in mind, Mossad has the most complete assassinations of any intelligence agency in the world. That's the CIA functional equivalent for Israel. So you have this witness that's dead. You have these guys that were in the World Trade Center prior that are Israeli intelligence. They were there to do sprinkler maintenance, but the Port Authority who runs the World Trade Center didn't have a permit for them to be there. So what were they doing there, right? And then when you look at the World Trade Center, the way it went down, again, looked like controlled demolition, right? I interviewed Richard Gage on my show. He's an engineer. 3,000 plus engineers that put their career on the line saying like this was absolutely a controlled demolition for the Twin Towers and for Building 7. So look, I'm not saying the Israelis did it, but what I will say is that there's absolutely Zionist fingerprints all over it. So and they had at least at bare minimum foreknowledge of what was going to happen, and they facilitated happening. And then it gets even better. That moving company I told you about, remember they had the vans? FBI does a search warrant at the headquarters. The head of the company is a guy named Dominic Suter. They go and do the search, and they find a bunch of computers and stuff. Not likely for a moving company. Why do you guys have all these computers, all these hard drives? So they call Dominic Suter. Hey, man, I want to bring you in for an interview. What does he do? Flees to Israel. Dude turns into Goku, instant transmission. Right? Gone. He went to Israel. To this day, they still don't have him. And then on top of that, those guys filled those polygraphs like I mentioned before. And it's just fingerprints all over the place, man. And this is stuff that no one, like, they kept this stuff classified for a very long time. But you can look at the FBI 302s now. This is all true with these Israelis being involved. And then I haven't even talked about Team E11, how they were in the towers before, and all this other stuff. But where there's smoke, there's fire, man. So
now, the 5 dancing Israelis. These are also a very interesting thing. On 9/11, I was driving through Pennsylvania. We had been in New York City that morning, and we were coming back to Chicago. We couldn't go to Washington. And Ted Koppel came on the news about noon and said that the FBI was looking for 5 Middle Eastern men who were seen videotaping and celebrating the attack on the World Trade Center. I thought, that's interesting. That was the first time Middle Eastern had been mentioned. I told my wife, they could be Israelis, because the Israelis are Middle Eastern. And lo and behold, that's what happened. The next day, it turned out these men were arrested in New Jersey. They were arrested on 9/11. And 2 of them, the 2 on the far right, are actually Mossad agents. And they're known to U.S. law enforcement as being agents of Mossad. The other 3, these 3 here, are basically sub-agents, operatives, working with. And they were arrested in New Jersey, and they pulled over, and they were pulled over. They had been videotaping and filming the World Trade Center burning, and as they did so, they were clicking their lighters and giving high fives and things like that. And they were observed by a lady in New Jersey who called the FBI, called the police, and then the New Jersey police caught them. And they had like multiple passports stuck in their socks, and they had thousands of dollars stuck in their socks, and their van tested positive for explosives, and they had box cutters. They told the police that, yeah, we were by the World Trade Center this morning. We were there. And what happened is then they went back to Israel, and after being held for about 2 months in Brooklyn in a lockup, and they went on TV. And the 3 who were not Mossad agents, the 3 younger guys, admitted. They said in Hebrew, our purpose was to document the event. Now, He should have, the interviewer might have asked, well, who sent you there to do that? But he didn't ask the question. The man that ran the show is Yair Lapid. He became the finance minister shortly after that. But this is the Israeli audience watched this whole show. Israelis all across the country heard this in pure Hebrew and understood. Well, these guys were there. They knew, they were doing their job.
Towers go down, and there's all kinds of questions. Ariel Sharon becomes prime minister in March 2001. At the same time, Israeli art students are being caught all over the United States. You can look this up. 200 of them were rounded up by the CIA. They were found roaming the halls of federal government buildings, taking pictures. They were Mossad agents. And then, as if they knew in advance precisely what would take place, a number of Israelis were arrested just across the river in New Jersey, photographing it. They had set up a camera on a tripod to record the event and were caught dancing and celebrating. Other Israelis were caught in a van in the tunnel with explosives, and they were later identified as Mossad agents. They were returned to Israel. And then, after 9/11, the United States went to war against every Arab Muslim country. One day, suddenly, for no reason at all, 9/11 occurs after hundreds of Mossad agents have been rounded up all year, as Ariel Sharon, the author of the plan in the 80s, becomes the prime minister, and the authors of the Clean Break Report take control of the Pentagon under the presidency of George W. Bush. Perfectly situated, they both in tandem, the United States and Israel, wage a global war on every Muslim country that hasn't submitted to Israel, which is going on to this day.
Donald Rumsfeld had announced that they were missing $2.3 trillion. Well, wouldn't you know, it was the Budget Analyst's Office where they were quote-unquote looking for this $2.3 trillion that exploded the next day, or the flight that went down in Pennsylvania. You can see the crater right here. Well, there's the two wings. Well, what they don't tell you is that crater was there already. The only thing that's new is the bomb hole.